On today's show, the Cleveland Cavaliers absolutely took care of business against the Milwaukee Bucks. George Niang led the way. We'll talk about his performance and much more on today's show.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. And download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Chris Manning, the man over there in what appears to be a turtleneck.
It's color blocked. It says very cool on it. Yes.
Okay, that's Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens, as always, for production. Cavs Bucks. Cleveland absolutely shellacks the Giannis-less Milwaukee Bucks. Takes care of business. George Niang with a career high in points. Donovan Mitchell with a big night. Overall, a pretty clean win for the Cavs, who trailed for all of 13 seconds of this game. Evan, what's your big takeaway from Cavs Bucks?
On a less serious note, it was Greek Heritage Night in Cleveland, and if I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo, I'm asking for a trade immediately after my team did not defend my part of my heritage in a arena that I do not play in normally. But my big takeaway is just this is another example of the Cavs kind of having unsung heroes every night, and it's not always Donovan Mitchell or Jared Allen without Evan Mobley and Darius Garland out there. And you're just seeing role players step up, with George Niang being the guy who really got some shine in this game after having a career high 33 points. But yeah, like this one for me was just, it kind of felt like it was over in the first few minutes of this game, especially when Cleveland just really stretched that lead wide open to start it. And there were moments, like you said, like whether the Bucks temporarily took the lead for a few seconds or whatever it was, like the Cavs just seemed like they're a cat playing with their food in this game. And sure, there's no Giannis in this one, so that certainly hurts the appeal overall in like maybe grading out how this game went. But I think like the Cavs had the right game plan for how to contain Damian Lillard. And then when Giannis wasn't available, it really empowered JB Bickerstaff and Isaac Okoro really to turn the screws even tighter on Dame. And also like Chris Middleton as well, just like two of the bigger stars that were on the floor for Milwaukee, and just made life difficult for them all game long. And it got out of reach like midway into the third quarter is when I think Adrian Griffin called off the dogs and started subbing in guys that rarely play for Milwaukee. And that's when I knew, I'm like, okay, credit's due, JB. You really schemed up a plan to make Dame uncomfortable, and it made it even more uncomfortable without Giannis out there.
Yeah, I mean, no Giannis, obviously, lessons, I think, what we can learn from this and how you can build it forward and all of that. But you get up by 20 early, you have the first quarter you do, you have the second quarter you do, when you win the second quarter by 15, and then you win the third quarter by 16, you're just constantly, as you said, turning the screws, building it up, and you just got big nights from in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of different guys you could look at as having stand-up performances. Niang, obviously, I think comes to mind first because you got a career-high 33-point night from Niang, and he was uber efficient, was 13 of 14 from the field. Mitchell has 31. Allen has 21 and 13. Merrill gives you 10. LeVert gave you 9. Like, LeVert didn't play well at all. He was 1 of 7 from the field, 0 2 from 3, and it just didn't matter. That's how far they pulled ahead to win this game and just totally dominate the Bucks. And this is now 11-3 without Garland, without Mobley. Garland closer, obviously, to coming back. We just talked about it on our last show. But you're winning games that you wouldn't have expected to win. You're taking advantage of the fact that Giannis didn't play. There's going to be value at some point in the fact that they won this game. And if it gives them an extra buffer in the standings, if it gives them an extra little tiebreaker over at some point, whatever it's going to be, there's going to be value in Cleveland being a team that won this game that if you would have guessed a week ago based on who was playing and who wasn't, that they might not have. There's just going to be a boost from getting a win like this.
Oh, absolutely. you can even look at it in the hard brass tacks numbers. Like, they are 2 games currently out of third place in the Eastern Conference, 3 games out of second place in the Eastern Conference. Depending on how this upcoming trip goes, along with what happens to Philly for sure, and definitely what happens in those 2 games and 3 nights in Milwaukee next week, like, we could be staring down, I don't want to say the barrel, but looking at a landscape where the Cavs really have handled a lot of this adversity that was thrown to them, where it felt like the biggest blow in terms of just what they had been dealing with all season long in losing Garland and Mobley. And like, they're still standing and they're still thriving. And I think there is something very interesting about that. George Niang called it refreshing. I don't think it was like pot shots at his time with Doc Rivers in Philly or his time with Quinn Snyder and Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert in Utah, but like, there is something endearing just by the fact that the Cavs could have crumbled at any point in this stretch, and there are going to be nights maybe they don't continue this 6-game winning streak or kind of keep winning in such a dominant fashion like they have been, but at least for now in the short term, it has them in a very nice spot in the Eastern Conference standings, and they are knocking on the doorstep of maybe climbing into that top 3 race versus when we were having this conversation back when they lost to Toronto and they were the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, and we're saying, okay, play in or playoff. Like, it has been staggering, at least in my eyes, to see how much they've kind of turned things around since that New Year's Day loss to the Raptors, and how they continue to kind of keep putting together like these really solid wins where there's not just like a consistent individual performer. Of course, there's like Donovan Mitchell, Jared Allen, but like, you have a standout in one of the role players. And I think for me, like, that's the most encouraging because it gives the Cavs a lot more trust when things are tight again. And that's maybe something they didn't have at times last season, especially when they, like Donovan Mitchell said, they started so red hot to start the year last year that when the test came, like, they maybe weren't fully prepared. But like this time around, like, maybe they do have a little bit more of a puncher's chance.
There's where this ends up, we don't know. But they're hitting some kind of stride. They're hitting some sort of positive energy right now. And where this ends up, where it looks like when Mobley and Mitch and Garland come back, that's going to be a really big deal. And if this is continuing, I think more than anything else, the fact that this team is just playing a lot better than you would have expected without those 2 guys. I mean, we'll end on this for the segment before we get into awards next. This to just me, being 11-3 without those guys, I think far exceeds any expectations you could have had for them without Garland, without Mobley.
Yeah, externally, I think that's certainly the case. I mean, I asked JB and Donovan about that tonight. They weren't surprised, and I think, you know, it's a culture win for them, and also just an easy way to say, like, yeah, we believe in our strength in numbers, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, like, again, they were on a 3-4 game slide, including like a very, very frustrating, and I'd say like kind of embarrassing loss to the Celtics. And then they lose Mobley and Garland like that. And you're thinking, okay, this season could very well be over before it starts. But they've handled this test very well. They're not through the woods quite yet because Garland and Mobley aren't on the floor without a minutes restriction, but like, they are getting through the thick of the wilderness and they're almost on the way out to the other side. And I'm just very fascinated to see what this team looks like as they kind of enter the stride after they add those 2 faces back to the rotation to kind of see, like, okay, like, how legit can Cleveland really be when they are at full strength and they are really feeling themselves from the inside out.
Coming up, Game Awards. There's a certain guy who goes by G-Wagon now. He's been upgraded from a minivan who I think is going to win MVP or at least be one of our MVPs. We'll talk about him and the other awards after this. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the largest DFS platform in North America. They are the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS. It's just you against the numbers. Instead of betting thousands on and battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you bet more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And if you want to play alongside some of PrizePicks' favorite players like the rapper Meek Mill and the comedian Andrew Schultz, you can now find them under the community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries from some of the biggest names in the PrizePicks community each week. PrizePicks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. football and basketball games. For instance, you have one of them exit the game in the first half and does not return for the second, that player gets rebooted. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Today's episode is also brought to you by LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than a billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have a qualified candidate within 24 hours. I can tell you that's got to be a huge relief for business owners out there. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats and might not have the time and resources to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. That is linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Game awards. Evan, who's your MVP?
Excuse me, it's George Niang for this game. Career high. Really hard to believe that he had 20 points in the first half. Like, it kind of just was a little bit of a zany outcome. I think his step back 3-pointer to really crystallize it could be a play of the night nominee, but have a night, George Niang. Like, we're really starting to see him look more and more comfortable. We've talked about this quite a bit over this stretch, and also just watching Niang kind of get acclimated out on the floor with this new team. He is really finding a touch and rhythm with this Cavs offense. He's really taking advantage of the fact that the Cavs are becoming a lot more 3-point heavy without Garland and Mobley out there. And tonight was a perfect example of it, where every shot seemed like it was just going to go in for him. And unfortunately, only one of his 14 attempts didn't connect for him.
He was unbelievable. I didn't know he had some of these things in him. It was cool to see him just get to continue also to play. There's definitely a little bit of, you want all the guys who are in your rotation maybe not to have to be in at the end of a blowout game, and it would have been nice to just have one other body, I guess, to get out there and not have Niang, but this team's banged up.
I did think for a moment, I will say, that when I saw Tristan Thompson checking back in, I'm just like, geez, did Damian Jones 3-pointer really get him the hook that fast?
Well, they played
Thompson. They played Thompson and Jones together. I know. I thought that Jones was getting the hook for Thompson already. I was just like, holy cow.
Yeah, games are over when you get the Tristan Thompson, Damian Jones front court. But Niang slopped and still getting points.
That is some Byron Scott level stuff right there, folks. With Tristan Thompson at the power forward spot.
Yeah, it's wild. Niang was awesome. Didn't know he had that in him. To me, Mitch, I went with Mitchell from MVP just because I thought he really was the dominant one early and kind of was the one who got them out to a 20-point lead more than anybody else. So there's that with that. But both guys, I think, very deserving. Those were the two guys at the shepherd of everything they did. And again, Niang has been really great of late, has really settled in, and that guy was awesome in this game. And that's why you go get a guy like him in the first place. Yeah, Mitchell was great.
Mitchell was really, really good in this game for sure. I think for me, it was one of those early plays where he just really bullied, and I'll just tip my hand. When he had Andre Jackson Jr. on skates, really early into this game, I'm like, this one might be over before it gets started, because Donovan was just ripping from 3-point range anywhere. He was just getting any shots he wanted. It kind of looked like he was just, really bullying Milwaukee's defense quite a bit. You notice the Bucks went to a 2-3 zone, and it took the Cavs a second to maybe kind of unlock that. And I think they went to that zone because Mitchell was just killing them from all over the floor. But yeah, Mitchell was sensational in this game. And also, like I said, when he had Andre Jackson Jr. on skates, when he faked him out like that and you saw Jackson Jr. fall, that was my play of the night. I do have another pick, though, but I want to hear yours.
Yeah, play of the night for me, the pass Mitchell made to Niang on the kick out, second
That's
quarter,
a really
I think.
Pick.
It was just Mitchell getting into the paint and then just pulling a pass out of nowhere with insane body control. Just unbelievable stuff from Mitchell in that moment as a creator and getting downhill and finding a shooter on the wing. I mean, I can't use one of the words I have in our notes because we don't use cuss words on there, but goodness, what a pass from Donovan Mitchell. And you could have picked a bunch of plays in this game, which is kind of the fun part of watching a game that they're just shellacking the other team.
It's a glorified layup line every possession.
Yeah, or like even if they have there was a play in the second quarter, I think that was like a busted play, and then they end up getting like a loose ball, and then Sam Merrill just like slides up from the corner and takes a three, and you're like, sure. Or like Isaac Okoro had a bunch of good defensive plays in this game.
Or the Isaac Okoro lob pass to Jared Allen on the fast break, just because. I'm like, that was another moment. I'm like, okay, this game's officially over because they're just going to be trying fun stuff until JB eventually calls off the main dogs and lets some of the other bench guys play. So. But my honorable mention is when Thanasis Antetokounmpo blocked Donovan Mitchell and then proceeded to talk trash as Mitchell was in the kind of like the photographer row. And then you watch him get back, like he's like beating his chest talking trash. And then you watch him get back on the other end and proceeded to get smothered by Jared Allen with a really nice Allen block. And then you see Mitchell just get like an easy 2-hand dunk. Like, I don't know why, man, but like I've seen those Thanasis lowlights on Twitter lately, and they make me chuckle. But like just getting the full Thanasis Antetokounmpo experience and just like that brief vignette really like made the day for me. I'm like, this is great. This game's got everything.
Yeah, Thanasis is one of one. All right, stat of the night for me. So Cavs were dominant in basically every category. The only one that was close to even was turnovers. They had 11. The Bucks had 10. Cavs had 17 points off of turnovers, though. The Bucks only had 7. Cleveland converted there. It's just another way that they really cleaned up. A bunch of other ones you could pick. And they had the biggest lead of 47 at one point in this game. They 11 to 2 second chance point advantage, 33 to 8 fast break advantage. Just a ton of different things you could go with. But Evan, what's your stat of the night?
This was I had to correct it after the fact because they're riding it for a second and then some garbage buckets kind of changed this. But this is the 4th largest margin of victory in Cavs franchise history at 40 points. And it's also the 135 they put up as the 12th most points scored ever. Chris, you may know this, but what is the largest margin of victory in Cavs history? Like this number blew me up. It was 68 points in 1991 when they beat the Heat 148 to 80.
Yeah, I would have guessed in the 50s would have been my guess, and it would have been like second LeBron era, like they just shellacked a random.
Actually, the second most was in 2021 when they beat the Raptors 144 to 99. And after that, it's just a bunch of 43-point wins, 40s, 39s. I'm trying to see, like, LeBron era-wise, what we're looking at here. Second LeBron era, the largest margin of victory was 39 points against the Charlotte Hornets when they won 129 to 90. It's just interesting to think, like, wow. There's some just, like, crazy offensive performances. But in, like, this one, it got out of the way really quick. And, boy, oh boy, they were not kidding when they said the Bucks certainly are not the same team they were defensively last year, when especially with no Giannis out there.
Yeah. All right, after this, there's a big trade in the Eastern Conference that is going to have an impact on the Cavs. Pascal Siakam is an Indiana Pacer. We'll talk about what it means for Cleveland, and go check out Locked On Raptors and Locked On Pacers. Technically Locked On Pelicans, too, because Kira Lewis was involved in that trade. So 3 pods you can go listen to right after this one, but we'll talk about Siakam and its impact on the Cavs after this. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Gametime is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. They have killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. They take the guesswork out of buying tickets. I love the last minute deals you can get. I built getting tickets last August when I went to New York, got Liberty Aces tickets on Gametime, saved myself a ton of money, saved my friends a ton of money, and there's not much better than that. There's also the Gametime guarantee, which means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section in a row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Again, create an account, redeem our code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. So Siakam is an Indiana Pacer. Evan, here's why I think this matters. You can, again, go check out Locked On Pacers for the analysis of that trade, what it really means for Indiana, and what Tony East, who does a really good job over there, thinks of it. But here's the middle of the East right now, and I'm going to include Philly in this as the 3 seed. Philly is at 26-13 right now. Cavs are 24-15. Knicks 24-17. Heat 24-17. Pacers 23-17. The Magic 22-19. Below that, there's a lot of sadness looking at you, Atlanta, who did beat the Magic after we recorded this, or before we recorded this. DeJounte Murray game winner. This middle of the East, I think from 3, and we'll see what Philly does, to 8 with Orlando, is going to be really competitive. The Cavs are playing awesome right now. They're 11-3. I think Garland being back will be good for them ultimately, even if there's some to figure out. Ditto with Mobley. Those are 2 of their best 3 players, 2 of their best 4 players, however you want to rank them. They're really important, and the talent level gets higher. Just be prepared, I think, with Indiana making this aggressive move and with the quality of some of these other teams, I think, for a real battle within the rest of the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, it certainly is going to be a battle. Like, the Raptors are kind of being this team that allow these in-season power moves for teams that are clustered in the middle, with the New York getting OG Anunoby, who, according to Jake Fisher, the Pacers were trying to get before they set their sights on Pascal Siakam. And then more so recently, like now, like you have the Raptors sending Pascal Siakam to Indiana. Like, it's a fun wrinkle for, excuse me, just because, like, for the Cavs at least, like, this is another division opponent. This is a team the Cavs have struggled with at times this season already, and I'm interested to see how they handle it, just because, like, it's another bigger team. Like, you look at Giannis and Brooke, or now you look at Pascal and Miles Turner, or you have like Mobley versus Mobley and Allen. Like, there's a excuse me again. Actually, let me pause. It's tickle in the back of my throat. Good. I'll just start back at the top. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it's interesting just because, like, Toronto's kind of been like the merchant for these teams that are in that grouping that are making the power moves, whether it's OG Anunoby going to the New York Knicks, or it is Pascal Siakam joining the Indiana Pacers. But now, like, it does make the middle of the Eastern Conference a lot more hyper competitive. Like, the margin of error is already pretty thin enough. Like, I've been talking about how the Cavs have really climbed that ladder from the 8th seed after that loss to Toronto to kind of breathing down the necks of Philly, but like a loss or two tumbles them back and things, and it helps teams like New York or Indiana or Orlando or Miami or even Philly, just because of how like tight it is just across the spectrum or the Rubicon for these guys. And so it makes it fun. I think it makes it a little bit more interesting for Cleveland, because this is a intra-division opponent that you're dealing with, just because, you know, it's Indiana and Cleveland playing the same division. But like, it's an interesting test for Mobley and Allen, because Siakam and Turner is just like already a tough duo on paper, but like they hit certain pressure points on Cleveland specifically, and it just makes it a little bit of a tougher outing, especially now like that this is an Indiana team the Cavs have struggled against. Like, I wonder how the Cavs kind of handle things next time they both face each other, and it'll be an interesting way to see how JP Bickerstaff kind of prepares the Cavs for that scenario, especially if Mobley is healthy for that next game.
I just think from a basketball fan perspective too, like we win with stuff like this. You can think what you want about the trade, you can analyze it however you see fit, but this is gonna be fun. And if you look ahead on the schedule, Cavs have 2 more games against Indiana. They play in Indiana on March 18th. That's going to be the last game of a little bit of a road trip where they start in New Orleans, they go to Houston, then they finish in Indiana. Three very different cities there. End of the year, second to last game of the regular season. After they play Memphis 2 days before, they get the Indiana Pacers at home in a game that could have real value, a game that could mean something for that team, a game that could have impact on playoff seeding depending on where things go. End of the year, that makes that fun. That makes that interesting more than it already was going to be. So I think just from a purely basketball fan perspective, that's really darn cool that we're getting something like this.
Yeah, and I think just again, like the fact that like the margins are so thin already and like it's going to be hyper competitive down the stretch, like it makes, like you said, like those games in March have higher stakes when sometimes at that point in the season you start to realize like who does or maybe doesn't have it. And in that scenario, like it just makes it even more fun and exciting for all the teams involved. And also just like, yeah, like you said, as a basketball fan, like the duo of Turner and Siakam is fun with Tyrese Halliburton on top of that, and they still have Buddy Hield. They still have Benedict Mathurin. Like the Pacers still have a lot of their parts. Cost them Jordan Nwora and Bruce Brown and 3 first-round picks. Like I can question the optics maybe of giving up 3 firsts to get a guy like Siakam unless he's like going to commit to you long term. But regardless, like, it's a fun move just because it's a pseudo power move to, in the Pacers case, hopefully like separate the gulf a little bit or the gap of what you're maybe dealing with on a game to game basis in this kind of weird middle that's happening in the East. And it at least makes the challenge for other teams that haven't made those moves or maybe have made those moves in the past, like really like line up and rise up to the occasion.
We're going to end there. I'm Chris Manning. That's Evan Dammarell. Thanks again to Jake Stevens as always. Back tomorrow with more Locked On Cavs, talking about stock up, stock down, the trade market, all of that and more. Thanks for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your day.